Welcome back to the crash course, how to reduce disruptions without yelling, begging, or bribing. In the first video, we covered mistake number 1, where we talked about how we don't want to choose between being kind and being firm. We absolutely want to be both, and that is the demeanor that will set ourselves up for classroom management success. In this video, we're going to cover mistakes number 2 and number 3. So mistake number 2 is assuming that good procedures will just happen. Good procedures will just happen. We kind of don't really need to worry about it. That is so not true. The reality is that procedures can seriously make or break your classroom. If you have good procedures and they're consistently followed, your classroom will run so much more smoothly. On the other hand, if you have kind of haphazard procedures, they're not really thought through and they're kind of not followed that consistently, it is going to lead to a whole lot of chaos. Now, why is that? Well, the first reason is obvious. It's the practical reason. If things are orderly and students are following the orderly procedures, there's going to be less chaos than if we're kind of just doing whatever, right? That's the obvious reason. But there is an intangible reason that is perhaps even more powerful than the obvious one. And that's this. If my procedures are really haphazard, and if I say, this is the procedure I want you to follow, but then I don't follow through, and when students don't follow the procedure, I just let it go, what I'm doing is I'm actually really clearly communicating to my students, I don't mean what I say. And you don't really need to take my directions seriously. And that has dire consequences. Students pick up on that, whether it's conscious or subconscious, they pick up on that, and then they start to push the lines more and more and more. On the other hand, though, if you have good procedures and they can tell, oh, she's on it, she's organized, and then you follow through with them and they can say he or she, oh my goodness, they are going to hold us accountable. They mean what they say. They're on top of things. They're not going to put up with nonsense. That also is sending huge unspoken signals. And you can tell that students are going to behave differently in those two different situations. So the question is, how do we make sure that our procedures are good and where we want them to be? Well, to help with this, I want you to think of a time that's kind of chaotic in your classroom. Maybe it's transitions, maybe it's start of class, end of class, maybe bathroom breaks. I want you to think about that time. And I want you to think about it. Does it have a procedure? Sometimes things are chaotic because we don't even have a procedure at all. If you do have a procedure, is it working well? And is it being followed? If there is a time with chaos, it's probably one of these three. There's probably either no procedure, the procedure doesn't work, or the procedure isn't being followed. So to correct this, first thing we need to do is decide how the procedure should work, okay? So that means just thinking through, if I don't have a procedure, I need to come up with one. And if I have one, is it the best one? Does it make sense? Is there a smoother way I could do this? Okay. Then once we think, okay, this is how I think it should work, then we need to teach that procedure to our students. And this is true whether you teach kindergarten or high school seniors. Now, obviously, the amount of work you're going to put in with a kindergartner is going to look different than in high school, but the concept is the same. And I honestly think in middle school and high school, we often assume that our students, oh, they know the procedures, or I don't need to practice them with them. 100% we do, especially if they're not following them. So I really want you, whether you teach kindergarten or high school, I want you to pay attention because this applies everywhere. It looks a little bit different in the different ages, but the concept is 100% there. So when you teach procedures, there are 4 steps. The first step is to explain the procedure. Make sure you explain it clearly. If you want to do modeling, this is where you do it. That works really well with younger kids. It also works really well when it's kind of a complex procedure. So explain, model, that's step 1. Step 2 is to practice the procedure. And I strongly recommend practicing it now. So like when you're teaching the procedure, practice it. So for example, if you're practicing a start of class procedure, you might be tempted to skip the practice because you're like, we're already sitting down. They'll just do it tomorrow. No, they won't remember. You need to practice. You need to have them go outside of the room and practice coming in the right way. Now, step 3 is to correct, okay? When they do that, when they go and practice the procedure, it is not going to be perfect. There's going to be students that are running into the class, or there are going to be students that, forget to do some of the things. You need to correct them. And then finally, the magic really happens. Redo. So this can be either on an individual level, on a whole class level. But if a student didn't follow the procedure, have them redo it the right way. Do you see how that's sending huge signals? I mean what I say. I'm going to follow through. It's also helping implant the correct habit and procedure in their mind, right? Because if they do it wrong, they're probably not going to do it right tomorrow. But if you have them go back and do it right, you're dramatically increasing the chance that they're going to remember and do it correctly next time. Just a real quick example, let's say we are doing start of class. I'm going to say, okay, guys, our start of class procedure has been kind of chaotic, so we're going to fix it. So, and I'm going to explain exactly what I expect, and I'm not going to take too much time here because I don't want to waste our time now, but I'm going to be really detailed about what I want. I'm going to talk about how, I want you to walk, not run. I want you to go straight to your desk. Don't talk to your friends. I want you to clear off your desk, start the bell work, and just explain everything in detail. Model it if you want to do that too. Then I say, okay, we're going to practice this. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to go outside. We're going to go outside quietly. I'm going to open the door and we're going to come in. We're going to practice all the things that we just said. All right, ready? Go. Then as they're doing that, I'm going to be correcting and having students redo. So when Elizabeth runs into the room, I'm going to say, Elizabeth, remember we walk. I want you to go back out and walk into the room, okay? I'm going to be saying, oh, I see students their desk is not cleared. All right, let's clear off all our desks. Oh, Isaiah, Catherine, Maitza, clear off your desk, right? So we're going to have them clear off their desks and make sure that it insists that it's followed. Now, depending on how well it went, if it went pretty well, that might be the end of it. But if it was like, that was kind of haphazard, I really might have the students say, okay, that was pretty good. We're going to try it one more time. And here's the things I want you to watch for, and actually have them redo it again. This really helps cement the procedures. Of course, you're going to continue to be vigilant for the next few days or weeks until they've got it down. In this way, it really are going to have your procedures followed, and I believe this is worth the investment because good procedures really are the background of a smooth running class, and they help prevent so many disruptions. So they really are worth your investment of your time. All right, that was mistake number 2, not taking procedures seriously, not insisting they're followed. Mistake number 3, not having a classroom management plan, and in particular, a written classroom management plan. Let me ask you this. Do you know what to do in your classroom when a student blurts out a random comment in the middle of class or refuses to do their work? What if a student's rude to you, or they're rude to a classmate, or half the class is talking when they shouldn't be? Do you know what to do in these situations? Now, I will say, if you ask a veteran this, they might not tell you, oh yeah, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Because the reality is they have so many tools and so much confidence, they know they can handle any situation. Their like little classroom management toolbox is full of tools. They know exactly what to do. But until we're at that level where we're an expert, a plan is incredibly helpful. Here's why. If you don't have a plan for how you're going to deal with issues, typically, unless you just have innate classroom management skills, in which case you're probably not here because you don't need this, right? If you don't have a plan, typically one of two things happens. Either inaction, like don't do anything. This is what happened to me. I didn't know what to do, so I kind of just let stuff go because I was like, I don't know what to say. Or you're really inconsistent. One time you come down really hard. The next time you let it go. The next time you kind of say, I'll give a little warning. And it's like you're all over the board. Students have no idea where the line is. In either case, this results in disaster. And it's a disaster because it's human nature to naturally push boundaries. Students are going to push those boundaries. It's just going to happen. If the line is not clear, they're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they find the line. And if you're not setting the line, it's going to end up way past where you want it to be. In addition, students can sense our insecurities and our uncertainties. So if we don't really know what to do, they are going to pick up on that intangible. And it's like this big blinking symbol, kind of like we talked about with the procedures, but even worse, it's going to say, I don't know what I'm doing. You can get away with anything. We don't mean to say that, but it's there. And the older your students are, the faster they're going to pick up on that. All this results in the fact that little problems don't stay little. things that start off small, like just a couple students talking, just a little bit of blurting, no big deal. Before we know it, if we don't deal with it, it's a few more students. Now it's getting louder. And before we know it, it's a burning inferno. Whereas these couple little things could have been doused with a bucket. Now it's like a raging forest fire. I don't even know where to start, right? So a plan fixes that. It prevents that from happening in the first place. And if you do have the raging fire, it can help gradually get it back under control. Why? Because when you have a plan, that means you know ahead of time what you're going to do. This helps you be so much more consistent. If you know every time a student talks, this is what I'm going to do, then you can do it every time and you can be more consistent. Then that line, those boundaries start to become really clear to students. This also improves your confidence. So now you're sending good signals. I know what I'm doing. Don't mess with me. And it makes such a big difference. We're going to talk more about how to make a classroom management plan in the next video, but I'm just going to give you a real quick overview if you're saying, Linda, what do you mean? A good classroom management plan has a few different aspects. It has thought out procedures. It has clear expectations. I know what I actually expect and where the lines are. It has responses planned out so that when common misbehavior happens, I know what I'm going to say. It has logical consequences ready when necessary. And it also has planned positive reinforcement and encouragement because we definitely don't want to neglect that either. Let me just give you an example of with talking so you can see what the difference is but when you have a plan, right? If you don't have a plan, you're like, what do I do when students are talking? You'll probably find yourself nagging, maybe yelling, maybe begging, maybe bribing, right? And saying over and over and over, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking, please stop talking. Just like, oh, I'm going crazy, right? Okay, what does it look like to have a plan? Well, you might first of all think through, okay, do I have good procedures? That's going to actually cut out some of issues in the first place. Then I'm thinking, okay, I need clear expectations. The rule actually isn't no talking. Sometimes I want them to talk, but I want them to talk quietly. Other times they need to not talk. So maybe I need a voice level chart. So I'm really clear with them. Okay, we're at a level 0, no talking. Okay, now we're at a level 2, we're in small groups, and I'm getting some clarity around what I expect. Then I'm planning some responses. And what I ended up doing for me was I actually had a warning system that I used. So the way that it worked was that if a student was talking, they got a warning. The old school way of giving a warning is to put a name on the board. But another way to do it is to have little yellow cards that you laminate and hand to a student. I've had elementary teachers tell me they would have like 3 bubbles and they would use a dry erase, like laminated on their desk, dry erase marker to pop them. Doesn't matter, but I'm going to give a warning if a student's talking. I'm going to do it every time. And if they get 3 warnings in the same, if they get a warning, if nothing happens, it's just a warning from them to self-correct. But if they get 3, then they're going to get a consequence. That's how I'm going to handle it. Okay. And I'm going to do it. That's my pre-planned response. Okay, logical consequence. I have a logical consequence ready. If they self-correct and don't get 3 warnings in the same class, nothing happens. But if they don't self-correct and they get 3 warnings, I have a consequence ready. And positive reinforcement. I'm going to encourage my students. I'm going to acknowledge when they're doing well. I also have this plan for how they can earn a free seating day. Okay, do you see how now that I have a plan, it's not even about whether or not your plan is the perfect plan, but having a plan says, okay, tomorrow when I go in the class and students inevitably start talking, I know what I'm going to do. The result is I'm no longer stressed. I know what I'm going to do. I can respond consistently. I'm just going to do this every time. And so the expectations and the boundaries start to become clear in my class. And the students start to realize when I talk, this is what Mrs. Cardamus is going to do. And if I don't self-correct, this is the consequence I'm going to get. As a result, over time, there are fewer and fewer disruptions. I hope you're starting to see the power of a plan. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but the reality is that good classroom management does not require you to be mean, and you don't have to have this amazingly authoritative personality. You simply need to have a plan and then stick to it. So those are our 3 mistakes. Number 1, choosing between being kind and firm. Number 2, assuming good procedures will just happen. Number 3, not having a classroom management plan. In the next video, I want to share with you the steps you need to take to reduce disruptions and create a smooth running classroom. So in other words, so far we've said, okay, here's some mistakes you want to avoid. Now I want to give you the step-by-step plan. How do I make a plan? How do I implement it in my classroom? How do I actually reduce those disruptions? So make sure to join us in the next video and we will tackle that. Before we go though, I want to remind you, in Classroom Management 101, we really dive in deep with teachers and we help you create and then implement a classroom management plan that works, just like we talked about, so that you don't have to be frustrated by student misbehavior and you can actually enjoy teaching again. You can find out more about Classroom Management 101 and join us anytime at teachfortheheart.com/help. See you in the next lesson.